Bill O'Leary here, Legacy Planning Law Group, coming to you live today, Thursday, April 15th, 2021. Coming live as part of our Thirsty Thursday series, where every Thursday at about this time, I'm gonna go live and I'm gonna talk about a different issue that might be of importance or relevance, or something I might find interesting, that relates to estate planning, that relates to elder law, that sort of thing. That's what we do here at Legacy Planning Law Group. So if you're thirsting for knowledge, you have come to the right place. So today's live topic: what is a ladybird deed and how does it affect my estate planning? Well, what the heck is a ladybird deed? Some of you may have heard of it. Probably most of you have not. Kind of a cute or catchy name. Well, it's a deed, and what is a deed? A deed is sort of a legal um, document that proves somebody owns a piece of real estate, real property. Okay, so if you have a house, well, if you go through your papers, you have a deed that shows that you own the property and the day that you took ownership of the property. So a ladybird deed, though, is a special kind of deed. And so what happens with a ladybird deed is that it shows that you would be transferring the property, let's say it's your home, okay, to somebody else, let's say your kids. So the deed shows that you're transferring the home to your kids. But you're sort of holding back or keeping certain rights in the property. So you're not giving away the entire thing. You're keeping for yourself certain legal rights. Well, what rights are you keeping? Well, number one, you're keeping the right to live in the house for the rest of your life, what we like to call a life estate. But you're also keeping other very important legal rights. You are keeping the right to be able to sell the property, and not only sell the property, but keep the money from the sale. You're also retaining the right to, if you want, rent the property, rent the house. You're retaining the right to maybe put a loan on the house, get a mortgage out on the house. So, in effect, it's as if you have complete control of the property, but legally you have transferred the property to a third party, let's say kids. That's a very common way to set up a ladybird deed, but you're keeping very important rights. Okay? Now, the person that is transferring the property, let's say you, the term that's given to you is called a life tenant. You're the life tenant, okay, or the life estate holder. And the person to whom you're transferring the property is called the remainder person. The remainder person. Now, this ladybird deed is sort of the casual, non-legal name that's given to it. The legal name is called an enhanced life estate deed. Well, what does that mean? Well, there are two types of life estate deeds. One is what's called, we call a traditional life estate deed. Well, that's where you would transfer, let's say, the house to the kids. You would keep or retain for yourself the right to live in the house for the rest of your life. But that's the only right that you keep, the right to live in there. An enhanced life estate deed is where you keep more rights than just the right to live in the property. You retain enhanced rights. As I said, you retain the right to sell the property, and oh, by the way, keep the sale proceeds. Retain the right to put a mortgage on the property. Retain the right to rent the property, and so forth. Okay. And again, you have the right to sell the property and keep the money without getting the consent of the remainder person, let's say the kids who are going to get the property after you pass away. Now, what are some of the pros and the cons? Well, the pros, the advantages are, it's a very sort of quick and dirty and simple way to make sure that the house does not have to go through the probate court when you die. It does not get stuck in probate, because the house then, with a ladybird deed, passes automatically to the remainder persons, let's say the kids. Again, no need for probate. That's an advantage, as well as the fact that it's simple and inexpensive. So you may say, well, okay, it's a no-brainer. Let's do it. And I get this question a lot. somebody that maybe has heard from a friend who's heard from a friend, or maybe read something on the internet about a ladybird deed. Oh, it's a quick and easy and simple way to avoid probate. Well, the problem is there are a lot of disadvantages, a lot of cons, if you will, for a ladybird deed, and I am not a fan at all. So, what are some of those cons? Number one is that it carries with it title insurance issues. Title insurance. Well, anytime you own property, you need to get what's called title insurance, okay? And you need that if you ever wanted to, let's say, sell the property down the road. Nobody's going to buy it if you don't have title insurance. Well, what are the title insurance issues that we see? Well, issue one, let's say that the remainder persons that you are transferring the property to, the kids, let's say that they run into some financial difficulty and they get sued and they have a judgment, a legal judgment that's entered against them. If that happens while you're still alive, it's going to put a cloud on the title. It's going to create a problem for the title to your property. That's not right. That's not something you would want, okay? And it's going to make it a lot harder to sell later. Compare if instead of a ladybird deed, you were to consider a trust, excuse me, excuse me, my allergies are acting up. Let's say instead of a ladybird deed, you saw the wisdom of putting in place a trust, what's called a living trust, and you put the house in the living trust. And the living trust says, hey, at my death, my kids, let's say, are going to get the house. Well, if some problem arises with one of the kids, they get into financial trouble and they get sued, that's not going to affect the house at all. Not going to affect the title of the house or the title insurance on the house. So a trust is a much better way. The second title insurance issue we see is if you have a situation where the house is being transferred, let's say there are 3 kids, but it's only being transferred to 2 of the 3 kids, and I've seen this, not all of the kids. That's going to create a major problem. Title insurance companies are going to say, look, we're not going to insure the title of this property because there must have been a reason why one of the kids was left out. Maybe mom or dad that entered into this ladybird deed excluding one of the kids was being unduly influenced by the other 2 kids, let's say, and so they're not going to insure title. Whereas if instead a trust is used to put the house in the trust, well, you can very easily, as part of your trust, say, I want the house to go to 2 of the 3 kids, but not all 3, and there's not a title insurance problem. The bottom line is title insurance companies do not like ladybird deeds. So that's the first disadvantage or problem with a ladybird deed, title insurance problem. The second problem is loss of flexibility. You lose flexibility. What if you after executing this ladybird deed want to change who the remainder person is? Well, you've got to do a brand new deed, and you got to record a new deed. Whereas if instead, compared to using a trust as your estate planning solution, you can easily change remainder beneficiaries very easily without having to go recording a new deed down in the courthouse. So a trust is much more flexible. The third problem we see with ladybird deeds, it doesn't have what I like to call good premature death planning. So what if you're transferring the house to 3 of your children and one of your kids dies before you? Well, guess what? When you pass away, your child that passed away before you, their 1/3 interest in that house is going to have to go through the probate court. Again, that's avoided or eliminated with a trust because you can already lay out what's going to happen to a deceased child's sort of share of your estate if they pass away before you. Okay? Again, a trust is much more flexible. Another problem we see is it doesn't have good incapacity planning. What if you, as what we call the life tenant that has prepared this ladybird deed, you become incapacitated? Well, what's going to happen? Well, a guardianship legal case or legal proceeding is going to have to be opened up, okay? Whereas if instead you used a trust to hold the house, you can have a trustee named after you, what's called a successor trustee, to come in and seamlessly take over management of the trust, including management of the house. No need for the guardianship court. So again, comparing a Ladybird deed to a trust is much more flexible and is a much better way to plan uh, in the event you become incapacitated. Another problem is that a Ladybird deed doesn't have good creditor protection, okay? So, your house, once you enter into a Ladybird deed, is exposed to your remainder person's creditors. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say, again, one of the kids is a remainder person, and maybe they don't pay their bills, but even if they do, what if they get into some sort of car accident and they get sued, and now you've got this injured party that has a claim against your child's assets? Well, your child's interest in that house is going to be attachable, if you will, by this creditor. So all it does is it creates problems, potential problems, for the house and the ownership of the house. Compared to a trust, you can lay out the circumstances to say, okay, if something happens to a beneficiary and they get into some legal difficulty, well, nobody can come after that beneficiary's interest in the trust. Okay? Can't do it, but you can with the Ladybird deed. There are also, another problem we see is it doesn't have good tax ramifications, a Ladybird deed. And let me explain. The tax code has a special tax break in it when a home is sold, okay? And so if you sell a home, then the first $250,000 of the gain that you might have experienced on selling the home, let's say you bought it a long time ago and now it's worth a lot more, well, when you sell it, that there's there may be a gain that you have to pay tax on, what we call a capital gain. Well, the tax code says the first $250,000 of that gain is not going to be taxed. Okay, and for a married couple, you multiply that by two, $500,000. This is called the capital gains exclusion for selling a primary residence. Now, what if after entering into this Ladybird deed, you as the life tenant decide to go ahead and sell the property, which you have the right to do, okay? And you sell it for a gain. Are you going to be able to take full advantage of that $250,000, or if married, $500,000 capital gains exclusion? The answer is no. You don't get full advantage of that. You only get to claim part of that tax benefit, not all of it. Okay? So we've got a tax disadvantage. And then the last disadvantage I want to talk about, by the way, compare that to using a trust. You can still preserve that full tax benefit. So again, I keep coming Roadsley back to, using a trust instead of a Ladybird deed. And then the last disadvantage is it has problems with homeowner insurance. So the question is, what if you enter into a Ladybird deed and then when you die, before the kids are able to come in and sort of arrange their affairs and maybe get some new homeowner insurance on the property, there's a fire. Is the insurance company going to pay that? Probably not. And there was a case that came out not too long ago in a different state, but still involving State Farm. And this shows us the homeowner insurance risk that a Ladybird deed has. We have somebody, his name was David. He created a Ladybird deed, naming his niece, whose name was Dawn, as the remainder person, okay? So David, the uncle, executed a Ladybird deed naming his niece Dawn as the remainder person to get the house after he died. Well, what David did not do is to add his niece as an additional insurer to his homeowner policy. And most people would not think of doing that, okay? Well, David then died, and then the home automatically passed to Dawn, but Dawn didn't get around to getting new homeowner insurance on the property, and there was an event, I believe it was a fire, before Dawn could put a new policy in place. State Farm did not pay the claim, did not pay the claim because the policy was in the name of the deceased person, David, who was the only person with an insurable interest. So David's estate had no right to bring a claim, so said the court, and Dawn, the niece, had no right to bring the insurance claim, so said the court. Okay, so again, it has homeowner insurance risk, and most people are not going to sort of go about that the correct way by naming the remainder person as an additional insured on the policy. So again, that's too big of a risk. Compare using a trust. Compare using a trust where even if after death that home is going to be going to, let's say, beneficiaries, the insurance will still carry over. Okay, so I know this is a little bit more of a technical talk than some of my other talks, um, but look, if you'd like to know more about what a Ladybird deed is and how it might affect your estate planning, and maybe if you'd like to know how we can or the button on the Facebook page, or just Google us Legacy Planning Law Group. And the free 15-minute call basically gives us a chance to fill each other out to see whether we could be a good fit, and also to better understand your situation to see if we can help you. So, hey, if you've enjoyed this talk, I'd love it if you would like this video, Facebook like it, better yet share it with your friends. I really want to get the word out, and really try to help sort of uh, address the very common misunderstandings that people have about Ladybird deeds. Because I get this question a lot because people hear second and third hand and they don't have the full picture as I've just laid out for you. So again, I hope you've enjoyed this talk. What is a Ladybird deed, and how does it affect my estate planning? I'm going to give another talk next Thursday at about this time, same day and about the same time, just a different topic. So if you're thirsting for knowledge, we will quench your thirst, as I like to say. So Bill O'Leary signing off on behalf of myself and everyone here at the firm Team Legacy. I want you to go make it a great day and a better world.